All right, Wolf Bear Records is here with Chris Gordon from Mad Trio.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
And thanks so much for having me. I appreciate this. This is great.
Not a problem. Thank you for joining. All right, so tell me a little bit about yourself and your music and
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the Mad Trio came about years ago. It actually started as it was a band that kind of detached from another band that had been performing regularly, and three of us kind of went off into the side project, and then that side project became something beyond what we had initially thought it was going to be. And and it started out as an original thing, which we did for a couple of years, and then we did follow the money, where we ended up doing a lot of cover material, which by 2017 led us to becoming the house band for WMGK in Philadelphia, which is a 1 year contract, which we did. And then after that contract, the singer Ronnie and I, and we're the writers, we're the composers of all the music, we just started writing again. And then, of course, when COVID hit, we just almost doubled down on what we were doing because there was nothing but time, And he has a studio, I have a studio, so we composed and basically wrote a record 7 miles apart from each other, and that's how it happened, and that's kind of how it continues to go. We still do it that way. We're constantly writing. That's all we do.
how many how many of you are in the band?
Well, it's a trio, so there's three of us, and but Ronnie and I were always Ronnie plays bass and sings, and I'm the guitar player, and then we have a drummer, and we've had a few drummers that come in and out, but they do contribute. I don't want to give that impression that they're not contributing. Of course they do, but Ronnie and I are producing all the tracks at home. So by the time the tracks get to the drummer, it's pretty much a done deal. They
Right,
might add their flair,
right.
but everything's pretty much written at that point. So,
That's
it's kind of an efficiency thing. I think it's an efficiency thing. I would love so much to be in a world where you're getting together 3 or 4 times a week in a rehearsal studio, which we have. We have a really nice rehearsal studio that's actually hardwired to record, and we have done that. But with what's going on now, it's actually just easier and a little bit more peace of mind, if you will, to just you know. But that's how Ronnie and I started. We started that way, where it was. I guess you call that file sharing, right? Is that the file sharing term? Yeah. But our turnaround time was ridiculous. I would send a track to him, and sometimes 2 hours later, I'd get a vocal track back.
wow.
And then I would say, "Hey, okay, well, what do you think of it?" He's like, "Yeah, I like this idea." Okay, well, and then maybe I would throw an idea like, "Hey, how about a harmony here?" However, I will say this: everything that we've done, because I think we're so in tune with each other musically, we never really go back and fix anything arrangement wise. It's really the track. So that's why the reason that we crank out what we do, and sometimes it's actually there are people in the community here that kind of scratch their head and it's like, didn't you just post something yesterday and now there's something else? We're constantly. It's like we can't stop. It's like once we're on a tear, we just keep going down that rabbit hole. That's our thing.
Well, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Being able to keep, producing that much music that fast. That's awesome.
Well, it's also the fact to me is like you see what sticks, because we don't have an outside producer. Though I'm definitely talking to a few because I'm still a believer in outside producers. I believe that they're important to the process. I believe that bands can self-produce, and there's been great results with that too. But sometimes, you know, two writers or a band can go down a rabbit hole that they can't get themselves out of, and a producer's great for that. So as we're nearing the completion of these songs that we've written, this new batch of songs, we have an outside producer who I'm actually meeting with later today, and well, we'll be online later today and discussing. You know, when you write like 30 songs, somebody's got to be there to say yay, nay. You know, because as far as we're concerned, we're like, put them all out. We love them all.
Sure someday you'll put them all out anyway.
Well, yeah, now today, I guess you can do that, right? Because you've got
Right.
the, you know, you can, there's so many different ways of releasing things. I'm still attached to the idea of an album, in the idea that it's an experience. It's kind of like a yearbook from high school, maybe. It's like, this was the experience here. I miss that, you know, but I love the convenience of being able to just put out a single or just put out a single song here. It's kind of like an interesting reverse of history because in the old days it was singles, singles, singles. Then that made the album.
Right.
You know, we're talking back to the 50s. So now you've got like, oh, I've got 10 singles out. Now we're going to put an album. It was really Zeppelin and Peter Grant who changed that paradigm, who said, we don't do singles. If you want that song, buy the album. So, you know, 69, 1970 into 71, it became the album world, you know. And that's what I grew up on. So I'm kind of like, you know, but you know, I'm a chameleon.
But nowadays it's actually going back to singles and EPs.
Yeah, that's what yeah. And EPs I've seen become a huge thing, the EP idea. And I wasn't sure how to, like, at first I wasn't, because I knew that was, you know, going back to the 80s, like a lot of metal bands were doing that. They were doing the EP thing. And a lot of that was, I don't know, this is probably an incorrect phrase, or maybe, I always wondered if it was a test market. It was, okay, well, I could put out an EP, and if it generates something, or if there's something there, then that justifies a record or a record deal, perhaps. And with social media, to me, social media is nothing but just one big test marketing platform, right? Because I mean, I could put a song up and see how it gets response, and say, oh, well, that worked. But there's a trap in that too. I was discussing this with a colleague of mine the other day. The trap is that sometimes that can be false information. You know, you might put something out, and the algorithm on, maybe say Facebook, for the lack of a better phrase, may pick up on that, and that gets more views, but that doesn't necessarily translate to, again, what I guess what it comes around to is, if you're getting back to the core of what you create, and if you love what you create, then you believe in what you create, because if you don't, no one else is going to. And it doesn't matter how quote unquote good it is. Like, in other words, I think what I'm saying is, sometimes you can fall into this false sense of security if you're getting this amazing adulation from a track, and you're like, oh, well, that's what we have to sound like now. Yeah. And of course, back in the day, record companies really steered the ship. You know, they had marketing departments that would put $1.5 million into an artist. That's why there were billboards, you know, on Sunset Strip. You know, the Doors were the first band to have a billboard advertisement. Sorry, now I'm getting all nerdy with my with the old classic rock knowledge, but um, I I always found it fascinating in terms of the way things were done, and then now it's up, you know, now it's the artist's job to be that, to be the marketing department, to be the, you know, the business end of it, you know,
Right.
which is difficult in a lot of ways, you know. So anyway, I didn't mean to get off into that tangent, but I could, I can,
Oh, you're fine.
I'm the rabbit hole king, man. I can go down, I can go down a hole, I can go down some serious tunnels. Yeah, so no, that was kind of like the premise, and then, you know, with we did love doing the cover thing, but we were always writers. Ronnie and I were always writers, so that's what we continue to do to this day.
Well, so you said you have your own studio, right? So you make your own music?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's not a I don't track, like, it's not a studio set up to track live drums or anything like that, but I do everything else here. I do a lot of session work for different artists. That's also, besides being a part-time DJ and a teacher online, I also do session work for different artists. Whether whether it's like they send me a file, they're like, can you do a guitar solo, or can you know,
You said you're a teacher?
yeah, guitar teacher.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been a guitar teacher since I'm going to date myself here. I started teaching when I was 17.
Wow.
Yeah, that was always like that was my job since I was 17. Actually, the funny story was my first student was my gym teacher. So this goes back to when I was like, true story. I was like 15. I was in high school, 15, 16 years old, and my gym teacher comes to me one day and he goes, "Hey, I want to learn some chords. I want to, and he was a young guy. And I remember him standing out in my high school because he was a big advocate of weight training. So like he brought it when he got hired by my high school, he brought in his entire set of, and all of a sudden you just saw this whole culture of kids getting ripped. It was great. I didn't because I was smoking a pack of Marlboros a day and hiding behind the bleachers and finding myself a bottle of anything. However, he came to me one day and he says, I know you're a guitar player, and because I had a reputation in high school as a guitar player, and they were like, I had the long hair and lanky, kind of scary looking guy, and he goes, "Would you teach me guitar?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, what do you charge?" And I said, "A passing grade. But I'm not getting dressed up in that gym uniform, and I'm not doing squat thrusts at 8:30 in the morning." And he turned around and he agreed to the deal. So I ended up being able to sit on the bleachers and read Guitar World magazines and smoke my Marlboros. And he gave me a passing grade, and I taught him how to play guitar. And the reason he wanted to learn to play guitar was because he was dating my history teacher. So he wanted to serenade her, and it worked because they ended up getting married.
Well, that's awesome.
So I got a passing grade without having to do any gym work at all, and he got the girl. So it all worked out. So that was my first teaching gig, and then from there I went full time. Until I started touring, and then when I started, I would take breaks from teaching when I would go out on the road.
So, as far as your touring goes, where have you been?
Well, I started in the 90s with a band out of Nashville called Michael Mason. He was a solo artist, and I had been performing locally in the tri-state area here, Philly, New Jersey, that area, Delaware, and he had heard of me, and he was on tour, and he was coming through the Philly area, and his guitar player ended up getting sick and had to be flown home to Nashville, and so he was in a bind. So a friend of mine recommended me, and I ended up filling in for a weekend, and at the end of the weekend he offered me the gig, and it was supposed to be a 5-week tour, but it turned into 2 years. So I ended up living on a tour bus for 2 years. Oh, it was great. It was great. My liver wasn't happy with me, but I had a blast, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about just life on the road, and I've toured since then, but they've been what we call fly dates, where instead of getting on a bus and going from town to town, the dates are set, and the band flies in from wherever they are. They do the show. We get back on a plane and we fly home, or to our respective areas of living. So, and I'm not a good flyer, so again, my liver doesn't like me for that either. So I do miss the bus. I do miss being on, that, going from town to town. That was always fun. It was always a good time.
Now everything's shut down because of COVID.
Yeah, well now it's like and I feel really I do. My heart goes out to a lot of these musicians out there that are really hit hard by this. By the time this hit, I was I had already basically sequestered myself to my studio. So it was, I had already been off the road for, oh wow, at least 2 years at that point. So I wasn't feeling the impact that they were, you know. But my heart goes out to everybody who's affected by it.
It's, I guess we're going down on a lockdown again.
Well, yeah, I guess it differs from state to state. Um, uh, I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of keep my finger on the pulse, you know, because I see things going on. I get offers. We as a band have uh, chosen to not perform until the spring of 2021. So we're not entertaining any offers at this point until the spring of 2021. And a lot of that too has to do with the fact that it kind of keeps the focus on getting the record done,
Right.
because that's really important. I gotta get the record done. Plus, I have an instrumental album that's been overdue for, you know, almost 2 years now. So I'm getting yelled at for that.
You guys are working on a new album, huh?
Yeah, I had been working on an instrumental record. I had done it. Speaking of EPs, I had done an EP some years back. That was attached to a soundtrack that I had done for a client, and we actually were able to make a deal where we dovetailed that into my instrumental record because there was a connection there musically. So, but that was 2016, 2017. So it's been a couple of years. So I have a bunch of new material, but I'm balancing between that and the vocal material with Ronnie, which, as an artist, I'm much more attracted to doing the vocal stuff, which is a surprise to most people because I'm known to be an extremely over the top guitar player. There was a time we were performing. True story. My singer, not Ronnie, a singer prior to him, would literally show up to a gig with a book and a pack of cigarettes, because when I would take a guitar solo, he would walk out, go to his car, and catch up on his reading, because I would play 20-minute guitar solos. I was notorious for that. So, but that's not the case anymore. I've tamed myself. So, anyway.
Pretty much ever since you were a little kid, you always wanted to become want a band and play guitar.
Yeah, it was. I remember the day. I mean, not the day of the week, but I remember the experience of the day.
You got a good memory.
Well, it's funny. I have an interesting memory. I don't know if it's a good one, but it's an interesting one. There are certain points in my life that I completely reconnect with. So this happened in 1 week. This is a 1 week stretch that I'll never forget. And I all the credit is due to my older sister, who, as I was 9, and she was older than me, I think by 3 years. So she was getting these records on vinyl. And one day, this is, like I said, this is a 2-part story in the course of a week. One day, she comes into the house and she's got the Kiss Destroyer album in her hands. And she's looking at this thing because it was gifted to her by a friend. And she says, "Look at these clowns." And so she just chucks the record to the side. And I'm like, and I look at I'm 9 years old, and I'm looking at this record, and I'm like, what am I looking at? This is insane. I got to know what's on this slab of vinyl. So at 5 in the morning, I steal the record, and I put it on my Fisher-Price record player, because I'm 9. That's what we had. But I'm also a dumb 9-year-old, so I don't understand that sound travels. So I drop the needle on Detroit Rock City, and it starts off with that little soundtrack thing. I'm not expecting the riff to come in, because I don't know. I'm 9. Album just came out. All of a sudden, the riff, wakes up the whole house. 5 in the morning. My dad's got to get up for work. My mom's got to get up for work. I was not popular in the house, but I was completely like, that was the upset. I heard that sound and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Now, I didn't differentiate between what I was hearing in terms of drums, guitar, bass, vocal. That none of that. I wasn't focusing in on one thing. I was hearing the collective. So later that week, now remember, my sister's still pissed at me. So I'm walking past her room and she had a friend over, and she says, hey, what are you doing? They're listening to tunes because that's what they did. They would, So I walk in. She's got Queen's News of the World. It had just come out, and I'm looking at the cover of this record, and I'm staring at it. And she goes, "You want to hear it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So she drops the needle, and it's "We Will Rock You." Okay, we all know it,
Yeah.
right? And I'm listening to it, and I remember this distinctly, saying to my sister, "That singer sounds very angry." But you're a young man, and I'm like, damn, he's pissed. I'm like, but then the sound comes in. Brian May, and that guitar hit. The minute that guitar hit, I looked at my sister and I said, "What is that?" And she goes, "It's a guitar, you idiot." She's a big sister, that's what they do. They bust your stones. And I said, "I want to make that sound. I want to control that." And that was the end for me. When I heard Brian May with that sound, that's when literally everything else fell away from my life, and I just pursued guitar from that point on, and that was it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just completely got obsessed with it. I mean, to this day, I'm as obsessed with it now as I was then. There's no difference. The only difference is that luckily there's a paycheck at the end of the week. Because at 9 years old, there was no hope for that.
Right. Yeah, that kind of ties into my question. I was like, well, who's your influences? But you kind of answered two of them right there.
Yeah, well, my first one was Brian May, my first influence, and then there was this, and I know a lot of people when I'm saying this kind of generally, people who've heard my playing are like, oh well, there's got to be Eddie and Randy in that mix too. And Randy Rhoads was probably more of an influence in my initial guitar style, but Eddie, again, getting back to a weird story, the first time I heard Van Halen was in middle school, and we had a great music teacher. On every Friday, he allowed us to bring in records, and then he would play the record. We'd play one track from the record, and then we would discuss what we heard. So this kid drops the needle on Running with the Devil. That sold me. Later on, I heard Eruption, and I wasn't really moved by it. Not to take it, I mean, it's an amazing piece. I've played it many times. But I was like, well, wait a minute, I want to get back to the song. Like, where's the song, And I think a lot of that came from the Queen thing, too. But the turning point in my life was Yngwie Malmsteen. That was what changed everything for me. Where because I saw him live in Philly, and I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And that's where I went from sitting down and writing songs on an acoustic or whatever guitar I had to practicing 8-9 hours a day, So over the years, the idea was to find the balance. You find the balance. Yeah, you want to practice, but you don't want that to be your thing, because then you go up on stage. Because I've done that. I've been on stage where I literally practiced on stage. There's people sitting at the bar going, "This guy's just running scales. This guy's just running scales." Like, where's the song? So there was that balance, is finding that balance. But those were my guys in the early days, and there's been, the list goes on. But those were the pivotal guys for me. Oh, and Michael Schenker, I can't discount him, because he changed my approach to the instrument. So Michael Schenker from UFO was a huge, and still he's probably still the guitar player I listen to this day.
I'm still waiting for somebody to say Joe Satriani.
Well, I've met Joe. I've hung out with Joe. He's a swell guy. He's such a nice guy. He's a nice guy. Some of my music, my instrumental music, is reminiscent of that. Joe's a great player, but okay, wow, painting myself into a corner with this one. I love everything about what Joe does. He's amazing. But when it comes to listening to that particular genre, I end up going back to Jeff Beck. I go back to Jeff Beck. It's not that I don't like listening to Joe Satriani. I do. But I'll be honest with you. I'm not a fan of instrumental records, which is why I don't. That's why I've been dragging my feet on mine. You know what I mean? It's like I just, my wife busts on me all the time about this. She's always like, "Yeah, it's been 2 years," and I'm like, I know, but I'm just not. Like I want to hear the interaction with the vocalist. I want to hear a song. I do. I mean, yeah, I love the craziness. I want to be a part of that too, but I can't. I can't do that all the time. I was coming off of a Nashville run, and I was coming through, and my wife and I were coming back from Nashville, and I had a date. It was a instrumental show, last instrumental show I did, and the contract did not allow financially for me to bring a band in behind me, so I had to play to the laptop, the backing track.
Right.
And it was a show. There were three. It was like a G3 kind of thing. Two other guitar players on the gig, and I'm gonna be honest with you. The guitar yoke thing just does not work for me. So I'm up there, and I had been used to playing with a band. You're interacting with them. There's this. It's an experience when you're playing to a backing track, a laptop. I'm talking about for guitar players. This is a guitar thing. I'm not speaking to other artists that do that. I mean, there's a lot of great hip hop and rap artists that do that, and it's really cool because there's I guess there's a verbal message there that's really cool and it's connected. But I'm going to get so much shit for this. So I'm an anomaly in the world of guitar shredders where, they set up the laptop and then they got the sounds. Everything sounded great. Everyone at the venue were absolutely beautiful. They were so great to me and they were great to everybody. Get up there and it's time for me to do my show. And I'm sitting there going, okay. Because I'm watching the other artists and they're playing to a computer, but they're doing their whole stage show. They're doing their whole stage thing. And I'm like, it's a computer. It's a guitar thing, right? I'm like, wow, they're doing the kicks and the jumps. And I'm like, wow, it's interesting. So I get up there and one of my tracks had a pre-recorded keyboard solo. So I introduced the keyboard player. That didn't exist because it's right. You get where I'm going with this. So my entire set became it was articulated well. I was sober, so it was articulated well, but it was a comedy show. I had turned this whole thing into, but the audience got the joke. They understood it, and it actually brought them closer to me because they saw that though I take what I do seriously as an art, I don't take myself seriously at all. Because I think that's when the pretension sets in and people are like, oh, okay. Oh. And so that's what I did. I just played off of the idea of, I'm not going to, the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right.
No, I'm exposing the curtain. Like, no, this is the deal. Guys, that's a backing track. And I'm going to introduce you to my laptop who's doing most of the work. So it ended up being a really cool show, but some of the artists on one of the artists on the show, I should say, was a little like, well, that's kind of weird. Why would you do that? I'm like, because that's reality, So anyway, I went off on another tear there, so I apologize.
So did your wife give you a big old push?
She is my Sharon Osbourne. Oh yeah, without question. She is, and she's actually the reason I continue to do what I do. she's always been a huge advocate, and like I said, she's also very business minded. So she was very has been and continues to be instrumental in the choices that I make and what I do as an artist, and it just believes in it. She's like, but it's not the what do you call that? They call that the stage mom, where it's like they're making these, or stage dad or whatever, where they're making decisions for you. It's not that at all. But she'll encourage
Right.
or she'll, in other words, the trust is there where I can present offers and say, hey, I got this offer to do this. What do you think? And I trust her response on that because she's always been really good with, and so far she's been dead on. There's been a few. There was I went out and did a Van Halen tribute for a while, which of course I'm such a European style player that me doing a Van Halen tribute seemed a little weird, but I did it, and that there are stories on that we could do a whole series on. But it was an interesting way to say, okay, let's reset and say, okay, that didn't work, but most of everything else we've done has worked out really well.
So yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean we're excited about getting this record done. I would say most of it's in the can. We're bringing in an outside producer to finalize stuff, and it's going to be good to go. We're going to be.
How long do you think before it's out?
Well, I'm going to be a realist. I really wanted it out by the holidays, but that's not going to happen. I'm going to say it'll be out by February. I think February without question. I would love, in a perfect world, would have loved to seen it by Christmas because it would have been kind of a cool Christmas thing. Now, having said that, I could, you know what? I'm going to retract half of what I said. Only half. The see, now you're regretting interviewing me because
No.
this guy's all over the map. We going back to your statement on EPs, we could have an EP available by Christmas, no doubt. Yep. Matter of fact, we already have 4 done that we could actually put up, whether it's on Bandcamp or any other service. We could do that. I could do that within the week. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely nice for Christmas.
Yeah, I think so. Nothing says Christmas like the Mad Trio and a bottle of whiskey.
No.
Why not? I think that's a perfect combination. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
All right, man. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for indulging my rabbit holes that I tend to go down, and I appreciate it.
Once you get that album out, I do want to reconnect and do another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do, without question.
All right. Do you want to tell people where to find your stuff at?
Well, currently we're on Facebook, The Mad Trio. Just go on Facebook, you'll see The Mad Trio. We had a website, but it's being redesigned. It was themadtrio.com, but it's not up right now, so don't go there. But you can find us on Facebook and find me on Facebook too, because I'm always active on social media. So that's the best way to get us.
Okay.
Very cool.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Absolutely.
You have a great day.
You too.
It's my